years in Rome, and they worshiped pure light, and the Gnostics picked that up. They taught that if Jesus had come into human flesh, he would have then been sin. Therefore, he could not have obeyed the law and couldn't have been the one to teach us how to escape the flesh. And this gave birth through a Gnostic by the name of Augustine to the concept of the Immaculate Conception of Mary, which gave birth to the concept that Christ, through a miracle of birth, escaped the hereditary weaknesses and degeneration of our race. And John called this the spirit of the Antichrist, which he says was already in the world. The doctrine of Christ, our righteousness, can only be found clearly when we understand the nature of sin and the true nature of Jesus Christ. When Constantine came in, he had come from the extreme western area of the Roman Empire, and there at the Milvian Bridge conquered the Maxentius, and he said he was conquering in the sign of a cross. But it wasn't the cross that Christ died on. It was that cross that the Christians had first adopted in Alexandria, Egypt, the Crux Ansata. It was the symbol of sexual union. Here's a picture of something that the church teaches happened at the time of Constantine, called the donation of Constantine, when he gave a symbol of the political authority to the Pope. It never happened. Documents were forged in the 9th century. And once the fraud had been revealed, the church would not relinquish the lands that she claimed. And even today, much of her holdings is a result of lies, deception, and cheating. She claims that she took the place of the pagan government. This is another picture I took in the Vatican. It shows Jesus on the base of the statue. You see, now it's fallen down there. But Christianity never took the place of the Roman government. In order to attach to Christianity great attraction in the eyes of the nobilities, the priests adopted the outer garments and adornments which were used in pagan cults. Life of Constantine by Eusebius. These garments you see the priests wearing are from the pagan cults. They're pagan clothing. The church did everything she could to stamp out such pagan rites, but had to capitulate and allow the rites to continue with only the name of the local deity changed to some Christian saint's name. They're deities. The saints of Catholicism are pagan gods that these people, thinking they're worshiping God, are bowing down to. Confiding then in the power of Christianity to resist the infection of evil and to transmute the instruments and appendages of demon worship to an evangelical use, the rulers of the church from early times were prepared, should occasion arise, to adopt or imitate or sanction the existing rites and customs of the populace. From the foregoing, which treats merely of the more important solar festivals, it is clear that those products of paganism are as much in force at present as they ever were, and that Christianity countenances, and in many cases has actually adopted and practiced pagan rites whose heathen significance is merely lost sight of because attention is not called to the source whence these rites have sprung. So heavy was this infiltration that Sir Samuel Dill exclaimed Christianity is only a sect of the Mithra religion. Roman society from Nero to Marcus Aurelius. Mithra worship was a continuation of the Babylonian mysteries. It was produced when Zoroaster realized that the people needed the teaching of a Messiah, a being between God and man that could bring the light of truth. And so astrology was compromised with Judaism, and now it became paganized Christianity. In short, sun worship, symbolically speaking, lies at the very heart of the great festivals which the Christian church celebrates today. And these relics of heathen religion have, through the medium of their sacred rites, curiously enough, blended with practices and beliefs utterly antagonistic to the spirit which prompted them. When you look at the symbols in the Roman Catholic churches today, you're looking at what were the gods of the pagans before, and Satan stays with his symbols. Yet the cross itself is the oldest of the sexual symbols. And the lozenge-shaped windows of the cathedrals are proof that the female sexual symbolism has survived the destruction of the pagan mysteries. The very structure of the church itself is permeated with sexual symbolism. Remove from the Christian church all emblems of sexual origin, and nothing is left. And this man knows what he's talking about. He's a world-renowned scholar on this. When you walk into a Roman Catholic church, and some of ours, brethren, you're walking into a porno studio. And God remembers all time at one time. And Satan knows what he's doing. When we look at these things in the church, we should be disgusted with ourselves. When the zealots of the primitive Christian church sought to Christianize paganism, the pagan initiates retorted with a powerful effort to paganize Christianity. The Christians failed, but the pagans succeeded. With the decline of paganism, the initiated pagan hierophants transferred the base of their operations to the new vehicle of primitive Christianity, adopting the symbols of the new cult to conceal those eternal verities. Christianity became the home of the pagan priests. The world, cloaked with the form of righteousness, walked right into the church. Why? Because she was compromising. She wanted people to think nicely of her. She wanted to avoid persecution. So she compromised. The world walked right into the church. Paganism, while appearing to be vanquished, became the conqueror. Her spirit controlled the church. Her doctrines and ceremonies and superstitions were incorporated into the faith and worship of the professed followers of Christ. What does Paul say? I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils and not to God. And I would not that you should have fellowship with devils. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and the table of devils. You can't do it. We need a pure religion, brethren. That's what we were called into this world to do, was to purify the sanctuary. People could grasp a hold of Christ by a solid faith and make it through the struggles that lie ahead. When you look at the incense offered to the pagan gods, you're seeing the worship of demonic spirits. When we compare Catholicism with sun worship, we find that the birth of Tammuz on December the 25th is the same in the Christian church. The nativity of John used to be the midsummer festival of sun worship. The Assumption of Semiramis is called now the Assumption of Mary. The mother goddess that was worshipped as the Queen of Heaven is now Mary, called the Queen of Heaven in the church. Cakes that were decorated to the goddess had T-cross on them. Now the church calls them the hot cross buns. 40 days of fasting for the destruction of Tammuz is now called 40 days of Lent, while Easter is still called Easter in the church. The resurrection of Tammuz at Easter and the procession of those images is carried on in the processions at the time of Easter throughout the world. Even where I live, there at PUC, they were doing the same thing, had their procession going. Veneration of graven images of Baal and Ishtar and so on being worshipped has become the saints and Mary in the church. The belief in the immortality of the soul has continued. A burning place of torment was all pagan sun worship. Purgatory came from the Greeks. The belief in the dead visiting the living, that's what we call Halloween today, and it's a Catholic holiday. I was there last time, a couple years ago, at that time of year, and you wouldn't believe the masses that were crowding to get blessed at Halloween. Again, burning incense, you go into the church, they have a different incense for every festival. Chants and repetitious prayers is called the rosary in the church today. The symbol of the cross is a symbol of sun worship, and the crucifix is the most important symbol in Catholicism. Amulets and idols were worn to scare away evil spirits, and Catholicism brought the jewelry of witchcraft into the Christian world. The round disc wafer had IHS stamped on it, and of course it does in Catholicism today, but originally it was Isis, Horus, and Seb, the Trinity of the Sun. Paintings of the child and the mother can be seen throughout the pagan world, and you see these in the icons of the Christian world. Infant baptism came from paganism through Augustine. Necromancy, contact with the dead, is seen through the mysticism of the Franciscan and Dominican order. The first day of the week, Sunday, is now worshipped, of course, in the Christian world. Pontifex Maximus is the name of the Pope. Now, Janus and Sybil were the pagan Asia Minor holders of the keys. And now the Pope claimed in a dream in the 4th century to receive the keys from these beings, and it got the homage of the pagan world. The high priest kings were carried on a throne, and I've seen the Pope carried on the Sedia Gestoria in the Vatican. The pagan high priest kings believed to be the incarnation of God. The Pope claims to be the vicar of God on earth. It's blasphemy. Offerings offered to appease the god is now called penance in the house of priestesses. Virgins used for sexual purposes is now called the nuns. Human sacrifices of the pagan world are now those who have been burned to the stake, the primitive church of God. If you look at Hinduism, you're going to see an absolute parallel to modern Catholicism in that she has gathered up every scrap of the pagan world. Nothing is left out of Rome. Here we see that the Bible was kept from the books of holy books were kept from the Hindus, just as in Catholicism. They used the rosary. They had a penance called the prashit. They did their prayers for the dead. They had a last right.